Delighted to have Takouhi. I'll get it right. I'm not even going to think about your last name. I'm just going to call you Takouhi. And she is the minister, presently the minister at Portland United Church?
Elgin, Portland.
Elgin, Portland. Oh yeah, okay, see over here. Okay, Elgin, Portland United Church. And so we welcome you and we look forward to hearing your story. I had a page about her life, and I was going to read it tonight. She said, no, I'm going to use some of that in my theme tonight. So I'll let you go to it.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I'm fired.
This is water. Sure. I just want to say good evening, everyone, and welcome to your conference, to your summer event. I am truly humbled and honored to be with you this weekend. M&O Conference holds a very special place in my heart because on May 28, 2011, I was ordained into the ministry of Word, Sacrament, and Pastoral Care in this conference. So I will share a little bit about my journey tonight, specifically about my ordination. But before we begin, I do want to say a heartfelt thank you to the UCW in trusting God first and calling me here this weekend. So, because I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm here. It is truly a joy to come home to M&O Conference, but I have to say, Bay of Quinte is not that shabby. We're very good there. And I'm going to be so biased and saying I love my presbytery, Four Rivers Presbytery. You know, we're the youngest presbytery because we only were given birth January 1st, 2013. So we are 4-year-old presbytery. So what the future holds, we don't know, but we do know who holds the future. So we are excited. I just finished my chairship, is that the right word? Being the chair of presbytery, and I still don't know how I made it through the year. But it's all good. So tonight, I didn't consult anyone. I didn't consult Kim. I didn't consult Carolyn. But I decided I think it is important for me to share snippets of my life story, as I call it, pieces of my life, because I find my life story is not just about who I am, but who I am through, and that is God's grace. So I'm looking forward also to get to know you a little bit. We had a wonderful dinner conversations here with Ruth and Norma, and we found out we've crossed paths at different places in life without realizing. And Norma told me she was there for my conference interview board. So I'm like, what? So it's just awesome to really, I'm getting spirit bumps by just saying that. So it's all good. So I want to share with you a little bit of my journey and to set us up for tomorrow and about this whole weekend, which is all about moving and dancing with the Spirit. And just to let you know, don't tell anyone, at where I serve, they call me the dancing minister because I love dancing during worship service, especially when we are celebrating with kids and so on. And I know 2 individuals left the church because they weren't happy with that atmosphere of joy, but 20 joined, so I'm all good. So tonight I invite you to go on a journey with me, free of charge, or only whatever you paid for the conference. No security checks, no luggage checking, no weighing and paying for luggage. So we're going to go to a little bit to Lebanon. We're going to go to Western Armenia, modern-day Turkey a little bit, and then to Los Angeles, and then come to the best place on earth, Canada. Wow. So Maybe this journey that I'm about to share with you may seem that it started 49 years ago when I was born, or maybe it started 102 years ago when my father was born. Actually, no, it will be 105. Or maybe it all started when the universe began. So, I don't know how you embrace life, but however it is, I invite you to come on this journey, not to see where I've been, but to come and be part of the journey of God's grace that has traveled through this earth with me. Please join me in your hearts for a short word of prayer. Holy One, you have brought us here from different corners of the earth and gathered us in your name, in this little place called Cornwall, Ontario. You meet us with your great love and embrace us with your relentless grace. May this weekend be a weekend of grace and gratitude, comfort and challenge to every single one of us who are here, starting from me. May we open our ears, hearts, and minds and be attentive to your direction, so that we may know how to be led by the Spirit as we dance this dance of life. May our steps be led by your wisdom and our heart leap in joy in your presence. When we stumble, your patience carries us through. When we, Father, falter, your grace picks us up. And when we are anxious, Mother, you embrace us. We are grateful today and always. Amen. Ready to go on a journey?
Ready.
Honey, is this? Oh, by the way, this is my honey. This is my husband. Want to wave like a royal prince. His name is Gary, and he is my tech man at the same time as the love of my life. Is this? Oh, okay. Wow. Phew. So, beloved, I invite you to come on a journey that started a long, long time ago. No, I'm not ancient. I am 49, going on 50. This November 18, by God's grace, I'll be celebrating my 50th birthday in California. But I believe my story, your story, began when creation came to be. My name is Takouhi, and you will learn it by the end of this weekend, I promise you. And if you are able to say that 100 times without stopping, I'll invite you for supper at my house. Takouhi means queen in Armenian. You see, the story goes that my mother wanted to name me Esther, after the Queen Esther in ancient Israel. But my father said to her, "Oh, Esther is such an ancient name. We should not name her, our daughter, Esther, but we should name her Takouhi, because it means queen, and Esther was a queen." And at that time, the name Takouhi in the Armenian community was very famous, popular. So they named me Takouhi, their sixth and last child. They told me I was the accident, because the doctor had said there wouldn't be any kids after my sister Ruth, but then I showed up.
Surprise.
Surprise! But later in life, I found out something interesting. That when my father was a young boy, he had a crush on a girl named Takouhi. And when he was a teenage boy, Takouhi's family moved away to Armenia from Lebanon. But it was so interesting that after my father's passing, 13 years of passing, I met this woman whose name I was carrying after. And I met her with her granddaughter in California, and we had 3 Takouhis sitting together. Talk about a small world. And I'm going to need, is this it? No. Is this it? Is this it? I told you. Oh, page up, page down? Oh. Oh. Yay. So I was born on November 18, 1967 in Beirut, Lebanon. Beirut is the capital of Lebanon, situated in the beautiful, beautiful Mediterranean Sea. The south of Lebanon, has anyone been there? No, okay, I think we should do a field trip next year.
Yeah.
I'm taking a sabbatical next September, by God's grace. Let's go on a field trip.
Yeah, let's do that.
You know, wouldn't that be grace? You know, south of Lebanon is Israel, and east and north is Syria. The entire country surface is only 10,452 square kilometers. The earliest civilization in Lebanon goes back to 5000 BC. As I mentioned earlier, I am the sixth and the youngest child of my family. I have 4 sisters and 1 brother. God help my brother.
Yeah.
I am born in Beirut. My siblings and my mother are also born in Beirut. But my father was born in Western Armenia, which is modern-day Turkey. This is the Armenian flag. So my heritage is Armenian. And the Armenian flag is tricolor flag. The red color represents the 1.5 million Armenians that were killed in the genocide of 1915. Has anyone heard of the Armenian genocide?
Yeah.
Oh, pretty cool. Okay, good. The blue represents the pure Armenian blue sky, which I've never been under, but I'm sure it's gone over me somehow. And I'm praying to go next year when I take my sabbatical. All this, God's gonna just drop lots of money down.
Right.
You never know. He brought me here, she brought me here. And the orange color is the color of courage and the perseverance of the Armenian people. And I would say anyone who is courageous and perseverance can carry that color. You will see that, as I mentioned earlier, my mother was born in Beirut, but her family left Western Armenia before the Turkish government intensified difficulties towards the Armenians. So her parents came from Beirut, Lebanon, as refugees from Marash. And you know what? I think I'm just going to walk over and show you where it is, because it is no longer called Marash. It is right here. So in 1973, the name was changed to Kahraman Marash. So there you go. Say that 20 times.
Yeah, right.
And don't worry, there is no history test afterwards. But my father, bless you, my father was born in Bursa. You see the red dot there?
Yeah.
So my father was born there. And just for fun, thank God for internet, I wanted to see how far is Bursa from Marash. So my father's family and my mother's family, how far were they? They're about 1,000 kilometers away from each other. So it's quite interesting. At the age of 3, my father with his parents, father's name is Hagop, which is Jacob. Mother's name was Peruz, which means ruby, the precious stone. Joined the caravan of Exodus with thousands of other Armenians out of Bursa, and they walked towards Syria. This long journey was about 1,400 kilometers. Who's ready to walk that far? Right? Who was it earlier? We were talking about walking. Yes. So that would be a 17-hour drive or a 277-hour walk. If you walk non-stop, 24 hours, you will get there in 12 days. Depends how fast you walk. See, Lebanon was under the influence of French government, who allowed the Armenians or invited the Armenians to come and settle in Lebanon. So my grandparents established themselves in Beirut, Lebanon, and had another child, a daughter. They named her Hibsime, and who only lived about the age of 33, 34, but passed away of medical complications of appendicitis and so on. So my father, at the end of the day, was an only child. Here is a commercial break. Who has seen this movie? Ooh! Remind me to give you a gift. No other person except Gary and I guess. Well, if you ever, I shouldn't say if you ever, I urge you, because there is no gory stuff in it. Okay, so if there was gory stuff, I would tell you. I would urge you to find this movie at your public library or Amazon chapters, whatever, and watch it. It is called The Promise, and it is Christian Bale and Oscar Isaac and Charlotte LeBone, and Charlotte is a Canadian actress, by the way. And there is a part in the movie where a caravan of people are walking through the deserts of Turkey and towards Syria. And that is exactly how my father and his parents made their way to Lebanon. At the end of the movie, you will also see people hiding behind a big mountain, Musadar, that's the name. And I also know grandchildren of the people who survived through that mountain and so on. So I urge you to make a note. It's an easy title, The Promise. So go find it and see it, and if you can watch it at church, watch it all together. April 24th is the Armenian Commemoration Day for the genocide. Because on April 24, 1915, the Ottoman authorities rounded up, arrested, killed, and deported 235 to 270 Armenian intellectuals, priests, authors, and community leaders. They took them from Constantinople to the region of Ankara, and the majority of whom were eventually murdered. And that was only the intensifying moments of the Armenian genocide. And you will see that night, that infamous night of people getting arrested in that movie also. As I said, this movie might have a fictional love story in there, but the historical facts are right on. And I can say I'm a witness for those stories where my grandmother told me those stories herself. So in 2015, which marked the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide, the Canadian Parliament did something good. They passed a motion, number M587, and declared April of each year as Genocide Remembrance, Condemnation, and Prevention Month. Did you know that? No. Oh, some say yes, some say no. That's great. And April 24th was marked as the Armenian Genocide Memorial Day. This is a glimpse of beautiful Lebanon. The cedar in the middle of the Lebanese flag represents the amazing cedars of Lebanon that you see adorned by snow right there, next picture. And the cedar of Lebanon, I'm not sure exactly why. Well, I know some of it, but not why it stands for holiness. I need to dig that out and find out. I can understand why it stands for eternity, because they live for a long, long time. And it stands for peace, and I can understand that, because the moment you go into these beautiful mountainous areas of Lebanon, there is this peace that surpasses all understanding, right? And I have a communion cup and a platen with me that I invite you to come and touch it, because they are made from the cedars of Lebanon. When I got ordained, my sister in Toronto ordered a set for me from Lebanon. So my sister in Lebanon, see, I have connections everywhere. So my sister in Lebanon had it made and sent for me. So you're more than welcome to touch it. And then you could go home and say, see, I went to Lebanon and touched the cedars of Lebanon. Here's a fun fact. Let's see how well you know your Bible. Did you know the cedars of Lebanon are mentioned in the Bible? Do you know how many times? It's a good number. Make that times more, times 10, 77 times in the Bible. And did you know that the temple that the King Solomon built included wood from the cedars of Lebanon? Yeah, so now you do, see? Free Bible classes. Here are two pictures that show why Lebanon was called the Swiss of the Arab world. You can enjoy the beautiful shorelines of the Mediterranean Sea and then get to the majestic mountains of Lebanon in less than an hour. You know, whenever I see Dubai and what they've done there, what they've created with so much money and 7-star hotels, I look and I just laugh in a way. And I think of Lebanon is not a rich country like Dubai, but I think this is just more beautiful than the man-made things that go there. But don't tell anyone. But this is the beautiful coastline and the mountainous scenery that you see here on the side. The specific village covered in snow is the hometown of the great author Khalil Gibran. Have you heard that name?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. So the village is called Bishara, and it's about 108 kilometers north of Beirut. And have you seen this picture in your life? This is part of Beirut, the capital. And these rocks that you see, they are called Raushe. It's derived from the Aramaic word. You know Aramaic is the language that Jesus spoke. It's derived from the Aramaic word Rosh, or in Arabic, Ras, which means the head. Or it can also very easily remind you of French, Roche. Raushe. So it all comes together. Isn't that beautiful? So that was just for you to enjoy a nice scenery. Can you smell the breeze at the beach? Lebanon is also known as the Paris of the Arab world because of its nightlife, cafes, and restaurants. I was born in a small town called Burj Hamoud, located northeast of Beirut. Burj Hamoud means the Tower of Hamoud. And Hamoud is a proper name, a family name, I believe. This little town or city is known as one of the most important shopping centers in Lebanon. It is an industrious and commercial area and is one of the most densely populated districts in the Middle East. Can you tell the apartment buildings? And there's literally no space between apartment buildings.
Wow.
Literally, this is another apartment building is attached to this apartment building. So if we needed something, we would knock on the wall of our neighbor and they'll come to the balcony and say, do you have a cup of coffee we can borrow? So they will fill up the coffee, grind coffee and give it to us. So yeah, it was that easy. The town is heavily populated by Armenians, which is normal, because if you were moving somewhere and you knew you had same speaking language people there, where would you go? To that area, right? So that's why Burj Hamoud was also known as Little Armenia. This is the main street where I grew up, Arax Boulevard. I lived here from November 1867 to the end of August 83, and I have not gone back yet.
Wow.
So 34 years, by God's grace, next year will be 35, and I'm hoping that number will be an awesome number for me to go back for a visit. That church is in the middle of those apartment buildings, a block away from where I lived. It's an Armenian Apostolic Church, and it was the very first Armenian Apostolic Church erected in Burj Hamoud, right after the Armenians arrived. You see how overpopulated everything is. The other picture you see here is the Armenian Genocide Commemorative Monument, which is erected in the Armenian monastery. Believe it or not, we still have a monastery in Lebanon, and there's priests being prepared there. They're doing their theological studies, and it's in a beautiful village called Bekfaya, and it's in Mount Lebanon. It's about 20 minutes away from my hometown, of course without traffic. And there is an inscription on the monument, and it says it's this monument commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Armenian genocide was erected with the cooperation of the whole Armenian community in Lebanon to celebrate the rebirth of the Armenian nation and to express gratitude to our country, Lebanon. During the civil war that began in 1975, divided the capital, Beirut, into two sides, Eastern and Western. And the dividing line was called the Green Line. I have no clue why they would call it Green Line and not red. I don't know. And this street was the dividing Green Line. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the island of Montreal. Oh my God, I can't say Montreal. You know, Boulevard Saint Laurent cuts it into east and west. Yeah. So this did that during the war. And Burj Hamid, where I was born, was the eastern part of the divide. And those rocks that you saw, the gorgeous at the beach, that was in the western part of the divide.
Oh, dear.
Late September 1978, when I was 11 years old, there was a 15-day-long shelling going on between Israeli army and the Syrian army, and they had just picked Lebanon to be their battlefield. Of course, I was too young to understand what was going on, and to this day I still don't understand what went on and what still goes on. And to this day I still don't know why wars take place, except I think it's greed, power play, and the ego that people have, and they cannot learn to communicate. At this time, September 1978, 12 people, 6 of my family members, that is my parents, my paternal grandmother, my sisters Ruth and Sholik, and myself, along with 6 neighbors, lived in a corridor of our apartment that was 10 by 5. My 2 sisters and brother, my older 2 sisters and brother, were out of Lebanon, and they were trying to make a life for themselves in Paris, France. So this is a picture of right after that war of 1978. Do you see the streets?
Yeah.
Big difference, isn't it? Here's another picture for you. It's a picture of the Holiday Inn in Beirut and the oil washing ashore along the coast of Lebanon from ruptured fuel tanks at a power plant about 30 kilometers south of Beirut. Why? Why do we need to have war? But then, if I have the answers, I would have the answers for life, and it wouldn't be good for my ego. I want to share with you a few words from the UN High Commission for Refugees. First, who is a refugee? A refugee is someone who has been forced to flee his or her country because of persecution, war, or violence. But a refugee can also be internally displaced and externally. Internally displacement is those who don't leave the country. For example, when Quebec was saying they want to separate, I was saying I'm going to go to Ottawa when that happens. So that means I was going to be internally a refugee to Ottawa from Quebec, right? I wasn't leaving the country per se. Well, that's a different opinion if you ask Quebec. But what I'm trying to say is, so if you go from one province to another, it's only internally, or from Cornwall to Elgin, it's internally. But if you leave the country totally and go somewhere else, then that's considered external. As of 2014, the number of refugees has skyrocketed. The number is up to almost 60 million refugees. What's really sad, it's sad that we have refugees. What's really sad is more than half of the displaced individual refugees are children. That means more than 30 million are children. Do you know what was the population in Canada in 2013? 35.16 million. So imagine all of Canada's population represents refugee children. Mind-boggling, isn't it? Yeah. You have seen these images on television and the internet, people seeking safety, security, and a future in any and every way possible, taking risks. Globally, 1 in every 122 people is either an internally displaced refugee or seeking asylum in another country, as per the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. This is reported in 2014. You see, my journey out of Lebanon was not on foot like that, was not as horrendous as the pictures you've seen. But my mother took risk by taking me to Damascus. To get me out of Lebanon, she hired a cab with 2 other people in the cab, so it was 4 of us and the driver. And we went from Lebanon, from Beirut to Damascus. We were filled with fear, but there was a trust of sort that was giving us courage. And I think you're going to get to know my mother this weekend, because she was a woman that really knew how to follow the footsteps of the Spirit and how to dance and just move and move on. And I remember the night before we left Beirut for Damascus, Syria, we heard horror stories and how people are being killed by insurgents on the road to Damascus. And if you've never read my article that Tricia Elliott did for me, did for The Observer, I have a big print over there on the table. You may read it afterwards. It captures a little bit of that story. Do you recall my father's journey to Lebanon from the genocide? Where did he come through? Through Damascus, right? Syria. Well, he arrived through Damascus, Syria, and 68 years after his arrival, I left Lebanon for North America through Damascus, Syria. Isn't that funny? Something happens on that Damascus road. I don't know. Paul? If you know your Bible, you know Saul became Paul on that road, right? Okay. So my mother took me to Damascus airport. The journey wasn't that safe and easy. A 200-kilometer journey took more than 4 hours because the roadblocks and the detours that the driver had to do. So instead of going straight, and I'm going to go there again for a moment, instead of going straight from Beirut to Damascus, right there, we went up and then down. So we made a triangle because of the safety roads that we needed to follow. We faced people like this that we had heard about. This picture doesn't do justice for the images that I see in my head. I wish there was a printer I can just push and it will print for you, but it's impossible. Because they were all on the mountainside of the roads, and they had these big machetes and weapons and so on, and their eyes were just fire. Here I am, telling you the story 34 years later. A miraculous journey. So on my journey out of Lebanon, because we had to do the detour, I passed through these beautiful places. This is the Bekaa Valley, which is known as the Fertile Valley. It's beautiful with vineyards and produce. And the pillars that you see on this side, they are the pillars of ancient temples. It is called Baalbek. This is one of the most important archaeological sites in the Near East, and has been declared World Heritage Site. And it was only in 1984 they declared that. Famous for its monumental ruins of several Roman temples dating from the 2nd and the 3rd centuries. So this area is about 85 kilometers north of the east of Beirut and 75 kilometers north of Damascus. So we had to go this way to go this way, so this is where we met this place. So I arrived in California September 1983. Lived there with my eldest sister Silva, who still lives in North Hollywood. Graduated from high school in '86, and this was my high school. The school I attended was a private school because I couldn't go to public school because I didn't have the correct paperwork. I entered the States with a 3-month visa, and I stayed 3 years. So, but thank God for many people who helped pay my tuition, and my eldest sister took care of me. And the school I attended, it was a small school of about 240 students. So from kindergarten to high school. So the area I lived in had many Armenians, and you know what? Now you can hear it on TMZ, on many news, that Armenians are everywhere in California, in Glendale, Pasadena, in Montebello. And we even have an Armenian, again, Martyrs Monument commemorating the Armenian genocide. In June of '86, at the same time of my graduation, my sisters in Beirut heard that the Canadian government had opened the doors for Lebanese people to call Canada home. So Ruth, who lives in Toronto now, asked me and said, why don't we all move to Canada? 3 single girls and mom. Dad has passed away in Beirut. So why don't we all move? I'm like, they're not going to give me a visa. I'm already staying here illegally. She said, no, all we need to do is go to the border and ask them to let you in. Okay, she had the minister's permit, it's called. So she got that because she entered Canada before me. Anyways, make the long story short, I came to the border of Vermont and Quebec. August 21, 1986. So the rest is history. I was one of those refugees of 1986, seeking a place to belong and find a safe space to have a life. You know, life was good in Los Angeles. I have no complaints. But there was something missing, something I didn't belong. You know, it's pretty scary for a young 19-year-old to drive around and not know at one point when is she going to get in trouble or something's going to happen that she will be caught and sent back to Lebanon. I didn't want to go to Lebanon, that's for sure. So my mother, who moved here with us, who also had the privilege to call Canada home for 8 short years before she passed away at the age of 64 on August 22, 1994. August, a lot of things happens in our life. Do you realize that? And she called Canada the land of milk and honey. Anyone, where does that come from? right? The Bible. And of course, you all know that. And where the ancient Israel was taken out of slavery and brought to the land of milk and honey, the promised land, meaning that they will never go without food. Really, that's the meaning of that expression. A life of prosperity and growth. Can you guess where I live now? Some of you know where I live, but I never imagined that I will be living in the Rideau Lakes Township, where I am surrounded by dairy farms. Talk about milk! And beekeepers! Talk about honey! The land of milk and honey. So after marrying my wonderful husband, Gary, at Northly United Church in Chamonix-Laval, September 3, 2000, in 2002, most of you will know her name. The minister at that time was Reverend Wendy Wright Mackenzie. Seaway Valley should know her. Yeah. And so M&O. She started nudging me to go into ministry. And I kept on saying, no, no, no. First of all, I didn't want to go back to school. High school was good enough for me. But then in 2004, long story short, guess who won the battle? God did. So for 2 years saying no, God won the battle, and I said okay to go into ordained ministry. And the night I decided that I would go into ministry, I came home from a youth group gathering, and I told Gary, I said, honey, how would you feel if I went into ministry? That means I would need to go to school full time. And he said, what were you waiting for? So January 5, 2005, I started taking courses at Concordia University, where I completed my BA, majoring in theology and minoring in English literature, and completed my Bachelor of Theology at McGill, and of course obtaining the Masters of Divinity at Montreal School of Theology through UTC. And it was quite the race from January 2005 till May 2011, doing school and internship nonstop. But you know what? The grace of God took me through it. And the grace of God supported me. And the grace of God has brought me this far. So I stand before you because God has been there. And God is still there. And I'm still learning the steps of how to dance with the Spirit. And some of you will know this, and I'm going to finish with this. The story of my call to ministry is a little bit more than just I've shared here. So I would like to elaborate just a little bit. My ordination journey was not that easy and free of obstacles. But God took these obstacles and turned them into stepping stones. At the time when I said yes to God's call, I was involved with the Armenian Evangelical Church, where I was bluntly told, you are a woman, you cannot become a minister. So fast forward to ordination, May 28, 2011, which we all know that the ordinance have nothing to do with the decision of the date, right? The conference decides the dates, right? The exact date, May 28, 2011, was the 93rd anniversary of the Armenian Independence Day, which was May 28, 1918. So I had no say in that. And that minister who had said no to me, he needed to stick with the M&O conference. He had no choice but to attend his very first conference on my ordination. Never plan a revenge or anything. So I am humbled and honored to share this story with you. And one thing I know for sure, beloved, is that when we open our hearts to strangers, our doors to strangers, for others to come in and call this place a sanctuary, we never know how those individuals are going to turn around and serve the country that they are in. Who would have thought in a rural area, the little Armenian girl from Beirut, Lebanon, is going to come and serve a 2-point charge and call this place home? So today, in conclusion, I want to say thank you. Thank you to Canada. Thank you to you. Thank you to the Aboriginal people of this land who were here before us. I would have never imagined or believed if someone told me that this was going to be my life. So I would love to answer a few questions if you have any, but I want to finish my talk with a little poem that I've written in 2011 while I was serving Ayerscliffe, Magog, and Georgeville pastoral charge in the Eastern Townships. So this poem was written Christmas 2011, and it is called Unexpectedly, and it is part of my book. It's in my book, I should say. So those who have it, it will sound familiar. And if you want another couple of books for gifts, they only cost $5 to ship anywhere in Canada. So here it is. Unexpectedly, you came to us, God of love in human form. Understanding our shortfalls and strife, you hold us in love beyond our regard. Hope is your message. Peace is your song. Joy is the result of your abundant love. Unexpectedly wake us up, God of love beyond our thoughts. May your message be our song, your vision be our guide. Unexpectedly, let us love through the ceaseless love of God. Amen. Amen.